Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of Slaying Dragons. I have with me today the grand poobah of all things Halo, Paul Hamilton. Paul, how are you doing today?
Hi, Mike. I'm doing great. Good to see you again.
Yes, it's always good to get together. And we've started a series called The Halo Way at the Support World Conference here in Vegas just a couple of months ago. Paul did a presentation, albeit brief, on the Halo Way. So we thought we'd dig into the details. And in our first episode, we talked a little bit about kind of how you started on the path to creating the Halo Way. So talk to me a little bit more about what does the Halo Way look like as it exists today within Halo?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, people who know me well will have heard me talk for hours about this topic, and it is something I'm kind of passionate about. And it's interesting because people do ask me that, what is the Halo Way? And it's something which it almost happened without me realizing it was happening. And I had to kind of take a step back and almost look at it from an outsider's perspective and think, well, what actually is it? Why is it that? And people would obviously been growing very fast, and there's lots of unique attributes about Halo, such as the private ownership and self financing. Um, and people kind of wonder how we do it. And I just think, well, it's the organization, it's the people, and it's kind of quite generic answers. And then you think, well, yeah, what is it about the people? Because lots of organizations, they kind of they do well, and they have great teams of people, and they'll all say it's always about the people. But there is some quite interesting ideas, I think, that we've implemented over the years. And as I say, it's not by design. It's just, I guess, a natural inbuilt instinct that perhaps I've had, which has, yeah, just was I born with it? I don't know. Was it something that developed in my in the last episode, as I touched on my initial career after university? Maybe that's been for I don't know. But to dive into exactly what it is, I think it almost always evolves around just long-term thinking. So long-term thinking is really important for every decision we make at Halo. And because we think so long-term, and every employee is like when you join a Halo, you're kind of here to stay forever. It's and you're treated like with a very high level of trust right from day one. You're treated like an adult. In many organizations, with all the controls and processes and restrictions, lack of freedom, undemocratic environments, large teams as well, it is very difficult to just trust, have that level of trust. A good example recently, which I absolutely loved, was um, we were working on a meta integration, and we needed to set up some two-factor authentication. And in any other organization, I reckon that process of getting, because we didn't have a cell phone for the SMS to go to in the name of the company. It was, we had some personal names, but we didn't actually have a number, and it needed to be in the company name. So the person who's working on it, just off their own back, because they're trusted and they're treated like an adult and they behave like an adult, they just went out, bought a cell phone SIM in the name of Halo, and cost like $20 or whatever. And straight away, problem solved within a couple of hours, and you just crack on with the integration that's needed. And I think in another organization, yeah, that just resonated with me, because that would have taken weeks or even months perhaps to go through an entire chain of command. And that for me summed up brilliantly like what is the Halo way and why does it work? Because and there's so many benefits you get when you do just start trusting your staff. And in that specific case, it's a speed benefit. So it's to do with just being able to well, and focus as well. So you can actually focus on, because when you start something, you just want to get it done, don't you? You don't want all these pauses, interruptions, having to move your focus onto something else, then move back to it. So it's really nice that people just have almost the autonomy themselves to just do whatever they need to do to get the job done. And it's way more gratifying as well when you can do it yourself or do it with. We've got such small teams. I know, like this sort of two pizza thing's very fashionable these days, and don't ever have teams more than two pizzas worth of people. But it honestly, it's so true. Is it Brooks Law talks about, and particularly with our developer, and we're really proud that we have a small, very tight knitted development team. I think I mentioned it in the last episode, it might be a tenth of the number of engineers that a lot of our competitors have, but we produce 10 times the output. The reason why is simply Brooks Law. So 3 developers, 3 lines of communication, 8 developers, 28 lines of communication, 11 developers, 55 lines of communication. Everything is so much easier when you got small teams working on the core product. I think it was 4 engineers that developed the engine of the Windows operating system. And that tells you something. So you don't need to have teams of hundreds or even 2,000 developers in the case of one of our competitors. And then it comes back to, so what's our differentiator? It's the agility, it's the speed at which we can move, and as you'll know from your experience as one of our key partners, that if there's a requirement that comes up as part of a tendering process, then if it does need some development to make it fit that exact requirement, it's all about us understanding what the problem is and creating and tailoring the solution for that specific problem, rather than just saying, look, we've got this platform, this is how you use it, you need to adjust the way you work to fit it. I came across recently, someone used the house for sale analogy. So you can either just say, you've got this house, it's got 3 bedrooms, it's got a garden, it's got 1 ensuite, and do you want to buy it or not? In our case, it's very much, we'll build you the house. You tell us what you need, and we spent 30 years figuring out the best way to deliver what customers want. And particularly in the last 5 years, since we had our complete relaunch of brand new front end products, so the actual experience that the clients have in terms of the tool sets, we've got 5-year-old technology when everyone else is kind of on 10, 15, 20-year-old technology. So it's now not just a case of the 30 years worth of knowledge on how to do it. We've got the most modern technologies as well. So yeah, it's the speed of development. So going back to Halo Way, what is it? The most important thing is just that treating people like adults, giving them the power to make decisions quickly themselves, and not having that chain of command, which means you can just have lots of small teams working on real exciting, cool projects, delivering stuff really quickly.
One of the things you also touched on in our last episode, as you kind of bullet pointed, as you just did, was also empowering them to the point where there's not a fear of making an error. The person going out and getting the SIM card, maybe there was something else that should have been done as a step in there, but they didn't have to fear, well, I'm going to get yelled at because I went out and got the SIM card. It's like, okay, well, we got that problem solved. Next time we do this, let's make sure this one thing is done so the organization is covered. But they didn't have a fear of, oh, well, I'm going to get in trouble because I'm getting something in the company name.
Yeah.
That wasn't something hanging over their head, and you highlighted that as something very, very important, that mistakes will happen, and as long as we're learning from a mistake, it's good. And it's something that really hit me where I live, because I'm very involved in the scouting movement, in the Boy Scouts here in the United States, which of course started there in the UK, and that's a core tenet of what we're trying to teach, being the leader of young leaders. And there's no better way to learn than to make an error. And so
100%.
by them not having the fear of making an error, as long as we can debrief on it and kind of say, okay, what did we learn? Um, there's really nothing that can happen. I always think about it at Scouts, and I talk to my parents about it, right? I'm there as an adult leader for health and safety, right? I don't want anybody to get sick from eating raw chicken or anything super crazy where somebody needs to be taken to the hospital. But beyond that, I want to create an environment where that they can do the things they need to do and make errors along the way. Because how did I learn? How did you learn? Right? We made a lot of mistakes along the way. Um, that's one of the greatest teachers.
Yeah.
And so by keeping that open and allowing them to do what they need to do, uh, that's what drives innovation so quickly. There's not that fear, and mistakes will happen along the way. And I haven't yet encountered an error that's not something that is easily fixed or easily addressed.
Yeah.
And so that's where the learning happens.
Yeah. You're absolutely spot on. It's two things there. One is you've got to have a zero blame culture. So if someone makes a mistake in Halo, that's a great thing because that is the best way that you're going to learn. Somebody's developed as a person, and also they made a mistake that other people are going to learn from. Yeah, they might not have made it themselves, and it might not have exactly the same impact as if you make it yourself. And I'd be all for like everyone making their own mistakes. But you've got to be constructive, and again, it just comes back to like just treating people like adults, and um, you've got to praise the fact that they took the initiative
Mhm.
to actually try and get the thing done in the first place. Um, and that's what it's all about. So two things there. One is whatever you do not blame anyone for the mistake. We're basically saying to people, look, we're giving you the freedom. We're completely relinquishing control because that is in the best long-term interest of our business. But you can't do that and then at the same time come down on someone for making mistakes. So yeah, you're spot on.
Well, and you hit the nail on the head there. By if they fear the mistake, then they fear that drive forward. So, okay, we drive forward. A mistake occurs. It's nothing that can't be overcome or course corrected, but something was done. Um, and as you talked about with so many organizations, it was something that I believe very wholeheartedly here at Excalibur. Um, when there's that fear, that's when the organization gets it's like putting an anchor around the organization, and it just slows everything down to a crawl or to a halt, or you may actually get pulled backwards
Yeah,
because you're not driving forward. Um, there's not, as we said, there are very very few mistakes that'll be made that are not things that can be corrected or adjusted for. Um,
yeah,
but it's the
exactly.
fact that we made forward progress.
It's important as well that people see that the senior people in the organizations, when I say senior, it's not so much hierarchical, but just, I don't know, the people who've been doing it for longer, perhaps, maybe. But it's important that people see these guys making mistakes as well, because they do. Everyone makes mistakes. And there is a tendency, I think, that the more experienced you are, the more inclined you are to maybe cover up your mistakes. There's a lot of you hear stories of like I don't know surgeons in hospitals and the dominance hierarchy and the impact it can have when surgeons make mistakes and they start covering it up. And anyway, I'm not going to go into that now, but it can create all sorts of difficult situations when you're even more serious situations when you experience people are not actually disclosing mistakes. And conversely, when they do openly admit to their mistakes, imagine the impact that has on the newer people in the organization in terms of them, because all we want is for them to have more initiative, try and take on more and more tasks, just get stuff done more quickly. If they see senior people making mistakes, they're not going to be worried at all about making mistakes. So it's
Mhm.
yeah, it is really important that across the whole organization you
Well,
stick to that
that's
health.
driven and that's driven from the top. I've had conversations with our team, and I said, let's talk about what happened here. I screwed up. Here's where I went wrong, or here's where um, something went off the rails. Here's what we had to do to fix it. Um, but as you can see, nobody's perfect, right? And in that drive to drive the organization forward, I'm doing the same thing, and I'm not gonna. I always tell our team, here in the U.S., baseball being a big sport, you never bat 1,000. You're not going to hit a home run every time you come up to the plate, and that's okay because all of it cumulatively is what drives the organization forward. Um, and everybody brings different capabilities and different knowledge and different experiences to the table that can drive things. I look at just so many different things that we've been able to do here at Excalibur because we have team members that have hobbies or like to get into things, or some of our video intros for these videos that go up on YouTube were all done by team members here that are not professional, videographers, but that's a passion or something that they love. And they were able to bring and not fear, oh, I'm going to get, laughed away. Hey, can I, try to put something together for that? Go for it. And that's something I've experienced. I can say as a partner, um, to all of your prospective partners out there, working with Halo is very weird for partners because as you talk about, for so many partner programs, there's an extensive amount of structure. There's a 27-page partner guide. There's all these things that are processes that you have to go through, and there's nothing wrong with having certain processes for stuff. But the Halo way is we eliminate a lot of the layers of nonsense that are in there, and I feel very empowered if I have a unique situation or a unique client opportunity to come to Halo, talk to you guys about it, because one, I'm not going to get laughed at or said, "Oh, that's a dumb idea." It's going to be like, okay, well, is this doable? Does this make sense for all of us? And it isn't a back and forth over the course of 2 months trying to figure it out. It's usually a 15-minute conversation, and very rarely ends with the word no.
Yeah.
And it's because, hey, we want to drive this forward. We want to, and it permeates the organization. What's best for the customer? What's best for the customer is going to end up being best for the organization. So as you said, being able to innovate, or going into a tender and there's a specific requirement. Is it doable? Is a conversation we've had multiple times together. Um, is it realistic? Does it make sense? Because if it's a very, very far outlier, that may not make sense, but it's a very quick decision that can be made. But very
Hmm.
rarely is that the answer. In most cases, it's like, oh, having talked to your developers, they're like, oh, that's a pretty cool idea. People would love that. Let us look into that. And then 2 weeks later, as you said, with all of the layers broken down, they're going, oh, hey, that's in the beta cycle. Take a look and see what we did. I think we got pretty close to the mark on that.
Hmm.
And you just don't see that in the software industry in general, let alone in the specific space that we play in the ITSM, ESM, XSM space, where innovation is driven that rapidly um, to meet the customer's needs. And that was one of the interesting conversations that I had with you very, very early in the partnership. Was, well, what drives you guys? Are you
Yeah.
driven by, well, what are the market makers saying the customers want? And you kind of chuckled and you said, well, I don't really pay attention to what the market makers say people need. We're paying
Mm.
attention to it, but it doesn't drive what we do. What's
Yeah.
driven is, what do the customers want?
Yeah.
What do the
Yeah. It's all
customers
about what the
need?
customers want, and what the partners want, and the partners want what the customers want as well, usually. So, and we're very unique. I don't even know if you know this, Mike, but we are now writing into our contracts about. Do you know about this? The long-term
I think you had
commitment, the
mentioned it in
lack of.
one of our calls.
As you'll know, we've already had offers from market leaders in the industry, and we're not for sale. Not just in terms of acquisitions, mergers, etc., but also private equity. I mean, I get everyday approaches from different PE firms, and yeah, it's and usually they in the end they kind of they're respectful of the philosophy, I suppose. But it's the very I mean, you'll hear all about unicorns. I think so. Unicorn is a privately owned $1 billion valuation company, and I think about 20 years ago in the whole world there was something like 200, maybe even not 20, maybe 15 years ago there was about 250 of them. We're now up to I think it was 1,279, and we are very much heading for that's our sort of current target is the $1 billion valuation, and we're well on track. But we're doing it in an even rarer way to that, which is not only are we privately owned, we are totally employee owned, and we've never had any debt. So we're doing it totally sustainably, organically, in a self-financing way, which I don't know if there's any company that will get to. I'm pretty sure we will get to a $1 billion valuation quite soon, but if I honestly don't know if any company's ever done that. I'm sure there probably is, but you will be talking, yeah, like single figure numbers of companies. I think there's 42 unicorns at the moment in the UK, so they are a rare breed in themselves. So I think we might have to create some kind of new term for a new way of doing business, creating businesses. It's definitely like pioneering stuff that we're getting involved in here.
Well, and it all drives back to the Halo way,
It
right?
does, yeah,
Um,
absolutely. It's if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't be anywhere near as successful in doing what we're doing. So it all feeds back to it.
well, and I know, once you start letting, outside investments are not a bad thing. We're not, panning, um, that as a thing, but it does change the dynamic, and we've seen it so much in our
Mhm.
industry. Almost
That's the
every
thing. It's not
organization.
it's not that. And by the way, I'm not saying that we haven't got the funds to invest and grow because we have, and in fact, you'll see next week some very exciting developments in terms of um, some some new projects we're working on, but which will help us, yeah, elevate to the next level. But anyway, it's not about, and I think because we've been doing this for so long now that we now do have these kind of reserves which will help us um, get to the next phase. So it's not that you don't need the finance, you absolutely do, especially when you're recruiting at the rate at which we're recruiting, and it takes a lot of time to get a return on investment from new recruits. But it's all about, and you said it earlier, it's all about us all being on that same journey. The train left wherever it left from, it's going to a destination. We're maybe, I don't know, about here somewhere, so we're not even, yeah, not even a third of the way to our destination. But we're all on the same train. We're all going through the same journey, and it's a really happy place to work at the moment. Where yeah, it's just everything's pulling in the same direction. It's great.
Well, Paul, as always, it's a joy to get together and talk about the Halo way. We'll continue to peel back the layers of the onion, on Halo, and keep an eye on our YouTube channel. We've got stuff out there where we're talking about Halo CRM. Um, Olivia and I have gotten together and are starting to talk about Halo CRM, which is a new solution being provided by Halo based on the groundbreaking and advanced technology that is Halo. And so there's details coming out on there, and then there's always something new, as we joked about coming out of the Mad Science Lab, at Halo, that drives innovation forward. So, Paul, as always, thank you for joining me today. Um, it's
That's
always a pleasure.
amazing. Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
All right, and stay tuned, guys, for the next episode of Slaying Dragons, and we'll continue to dig into the Halo way. Take care, everyone.